We're back. This is a continuation from the last lesson on factoring out monomials because the video cut short. So let's go ahead and work this one out, and we'll go a little bit slower. I'll go a little bit slower this time, and maybe you'll catch on and understand. All right, so we have nx squared, or n times x to the second power, plus 3 times n times x times y. So what we want to do here is we want to factor out our variables that are in common here. So let's look at this closely. We have for both of your monomials, they both have an n to the first power, and they both have an x, at least x to the first power for both of them, because the first one, n x to the second power, we can factor out x to the first power for that also. But they don't both have a y, so you cannot factor out a y between the two. And if you notice, the coefficient for the second monomial is what, 3? But what is the coefficient for the first one? Anybody want to take a guess? Anybody? Going once, going twice. The coefficient for the first one is 1. Okay, that is the number, that is the number that is in front of the variables. It is a 1. So what is the greatest common factor between 1 and 3? It would be 1. All right, so when we factor out, we're just going to leave it as 1. In this case, when we factor out these coefficients, it's going to be a 1. So now we can factor out our variables that go with it. So our first variable to factor out is the n, because they both have n to the first power. All right, and as I said before, the coefficient, the greatest common factor, is 1. So we don't have to put a 1 in front of that n. All right, what is the greatest common factor, or should I say here, so we will not get confused, what is the smallest amount of x's that they both share? And let me do this really quickly so we won't get, because I know it might be a little bit of confusion for some. So let me break it down just a little bit better for you, since we do have a little bit more time on this video. So when we expand nx to the second power, this is what it's going to look like. Now remember, this is all multiplications, all being multiplied. So it's going to be n. As soon as the screen stops moving, we can work it out. So it's going to be n times x times x. That is actually n times x to the second power. Okay? That's what we're looking at. And then when you go and look at 3nxy, that is actually 3 times n times x times y. Okay? Now, looking at that, we can circle and see what are the factors that they have in common. So the factors that they have in common here are n and n, x and x. Okay? That's it. That's the common factors that they have. So this is what we're going to factor out from the monomials over here. We're going to factor that out. We're going to factor out n and x. So going back to that on the other side now, we're going back. I'll get rid of these arrows. I'm just going to factor out n and x. So we have nx. I'm going to put my parentheses. And now I'm going to start the process of saying, what do I multiply nx by to get nx to the second power? What do I multiply this nx by to get this nx to the second power? If you said x to the first power, you would be correct. So x to the first power. Then we're going to use that same process and ask the question, what do I multiply nx by to get 3 times n times x times y? What do we need to multiply that by? If you said 3 and y, you would be correct. Remember, we couldn't factor out the y, so we definitely need it inside the parentheses. So this is the correct answer for this one. Okay, now let's go to the next one. And we're going to factor out, we're going to find the greatest common factor between the 12 and the 8. Remember your factors of 12. And we're going to put that there really quickly. The factors of 12. We have the factors of 12. We have 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4, 5 times nothing will give us 12 if we're just doing it with whole numbers. 6 times 2, which we already have 2 times 6. And if we keep going, it'll just be 12 times 1, which we already have 1 times 12, so we don't have to keep going. All right, and then we list out the factors of 8. What are the factors of 8? Does anybody remember? All right, the factors of 8. Factors of 8, 1 times 8, 2 times 4, 3 times nothing will give us 8 if we're talking about just whole numbers. 4 times 2 we already have. 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have all the factors. Now what are the factors that they have in common? And then we'll find the greatest common factor. They both have 1. They both have 2. They both have 4. There are no other factors that they have in common. We already got the 2, which is down here, by the way. So the greatest common factor that they have is 4. So we can factor out the 4. Okay? So let's factor out our 4. 4 is what we can factor out. So 4. Now look at your a terms. We got a to the second power here. I got a to the first. So what do they have in common? They both have a to the first in common. If we were to expand this like previously, just really quickly, I'll do that. Really quickly, if we were to expand a to the second, so this is 12a times a. This is 12a to the second. And if we were to expand 8a to the first, which is up here, and 12a to the second is over here. How many a's do they have in common? They both have 1a in common, okay? That 1a. So we can factor out just 1a. So don't get confused with that. Just factor out the 1a because that's the only one that they have in common. All right, so we have 4a. Same thing with b. How many b's do they have in common? Well, there's only one b that they have in common because one of them is b to the third and the other one is just b to the first. How many c's do they have in common? They have no c's in common because one of them, 12, has, well, the side with 12 as a coefficient has c to the third power, but 8 does not have any c's, so we don't factor out c's. How many d terms do they have in common? If you said d to the second, you would be correct. Okay? So that's what we factor out. Now we go to the process of saying, what do we multiply 4a b d to the second power by to get what we have above it? Okay? So let's clear up some space here, and we're going to go ahead and put that together inside the parentheses. All right, let's do it. All right, let's go. All right, here we go. So what do we multiply 4 by to get 12? What number times 4 gives you 12? If you said 3, you will be correct. Now we have to get 12a to the second. So 4a times what is going to give us a to the second? If you said it's going to give us 12a to the second, it will be 3a. What do we multiply b by to get b to the third? It will be b to the second. And then we have to put our c to the third here because we didn't factor out any c's. And then d to the second, we don't even need to put in there, okay? So it's 3ab to the second times c to the third. And now we have to do the same thing for the 8. What do you multiply 4 by to get 8? If you said 2, you'll be correct. Now this is has a to the first, and we already factored out 1a to the first. We already factored out 1b to the first, so we don't need to put that in there. But we did not factor out d to the third. We factor out d to the second, so we have to put 1d in here. So when we multiply it, we'll get d to the third. And then we can close our parentheses because we're finished. And this is your answer here. Let me go ahead and put a box around this. This is the final answer, what you see in the green here, in the box in the green, okay? So it is all factored out. All right, I'm giving you some homework for you to try, and I want you to bring it back and show the good mister that you understood the lesson and you can apply with you what you have learned. So here it is in the blue. You are to factor out 2m to the second plus 6m n, or 6 times m times n. And you are to factor out one more. Let's see here. See if you can apply your lesson, apply your understanding. 8r to the fifth minus 20r to the fourth minus 12r to the second. I want you to factor it out, bring it back. All right. So this has been factoring monomials. This is part 2 of a previous video, which you should see this back to back on the channel. All right, until the next lesson, because we're getting closer and closer to quadratics now. Until the next lesson, masalama.